Welcome to the Performance Enhancing Podcast. It's like steroids for your brain. A podcast for people looking to live life at their peak potential. Chock full of real-world tools and knowledge that you can apply in your life today. By providing you with a lens into the lives, beliefs, practices, and actions of those who are already living extraordinary lives, the Performance Enhancing Podcast will help you shift your mindset or create that change in your daily rituals and habits so you can explode with success in the areas of life that are most important to you. So get ready for another dose of Performance Enhancing Podcast with SatoriPrime. Here's your host, Ilan Ferdman.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Performance Enhancing Podcast with your host, Ilan Ferdman. We're up to Beer Talk 9. We actually got confirmation. So part 2 of Beer Talk 9 coming your way right now. And if you didn't listen to part 1, basically what we're talking about here in these 2 sections is the number one lesson that we have to teach people in our masterminds. People that we coach, people that we train, anyone that is struggling with mastering anything in life or taking anything on in life, this is something they all have to go through. This is one of the first walls you have to break down if you are going to be successful at anything in your life. So if you didn't listen to part 1, this part 2 might be a little bit out of context, so I suggest that you go and do that. And if you did listen to part 1, hope you enjoyed part 2. We're going to really delve much deeper into the mindset portion in this part. So enjoy part 2, and I'll see you on the next Performance Enhancing Podcast.
I'm always fascinated by the fact that we forget. Because now I think back, now that I know this stuff, and I see it active in my life, I think back to like all the things we were good at, like street hockey and tennis and whatever else we were doing, like sports and things around the house and whatever that I was skilled at, that I'm still skilled at today. And I think that didn't happen overnight. That was thousands of man hours put in, like infinite. I just never thought about not putting in the effort because it wasn't effort, it was fun, right? So when we're kids, we're doing a lot of fun stuff. So putting in effort is nothing for us. But when we get older, there's stuff we want to get good at, but it's effort, or you have to like motivate yourself or all these other things. And we're like, well, forget it, I'll just procrastinate. But you forget that it actually takes effort to get good at stuff. So like we've been in marketing for 4.5 years, and I can tell you I'm good. And there's times, just like going to the gym, after a while, you're like, okay, I've plateaued. Okay, what's going on? Like, why do I not have that juice, that energy that was going on before? And it's the same thing you got to deal with. Right? How do I challenge myself in new ways to get myself excited again? I mean, I'm never as excited as when I'm learning something new, but I'm also never as frustrated as when that's happening either.
Exactly.
It's like you can't separate those two worlds. So it's like, if you want to get excited, guess what? It comes along with being kind of frustrated. But every time you break through a frustration, that's where the excitement is. Yeah. So it's like the relationship between the two is actually really important.
Yeah. Think about anything in your life that you've gotten some level of mastery. I'm not saying you're like a professional at it, but you've gotten some level of mastery. So I always bring this up. Tennis is something that I'm deeply, deeply passionate about. Video, making video, like creating the studio, understanding how video and photography works, deeply, deeply passionate about. So tennis, for example, is one of those things where you get to a point where you're always teetering on this balance of frustration or elation. Why? Because when you start at something, even though you're frustrated, once you get past that, you get to a point where you're kind of like unconsciously good at it.
I think you also have a lack of expectation when you're first starting, because you're like, well, I don't really know what to expect for myself. But when you start getting good and you hit that plateau, now you like know what to expect. And when you don't perform like that, you're like, oh.
Exactly. Yeah. So you're kind of in that mode where you know certain things, and you know that when you don't do them, it really annoys you because you know that you can do them.
Yeah.
But what I love about as you get deeper and deeper into stuff is the intricacies, those like hidden little gems where, I went and took a lesson and I was working on my slice and I just couldn't, it always floated. It always like sailed really high over the net, which is a worthless shot. And the teacher just looks at me, goes, just raise your finger like this. So like my fingers were like this. He goes, just move your finger up like this.
Barely an inch.
And do the same motion. And I did it, and it was just like lasers. And I was like, are you kidding?
That one little finger's doing that?
Are you kidding? This is what we did? And I get elated because it's like those little things at this point, when you're a race car driver, the last tenths of a second are if you set a lap time, your first lap time, at the beginning to knock off seconds is super easy. Those last tenths, that last half second and then tenth of a second that's where all the work, that's where all the frustration and elation is. But when you nail it, it's just the greatest feeling in the world.
You know what it reminds me of? I always say you don't really understand a culture till you speak their language. So if you have to go and master a new language, again, it's going to be frustrating, overwhelming, all these things, but you're going to find the secrets of the culture. Yeah. Because you've studied the language. And I think it's the same thing with everything. When you're mastering stuff, it's like, now you're in the know. Like there's these little secrets. I don't like calling it secrets because it's
nuances.
They're nuances, exactly. It's like little things that you just would never be able to recognize unless you reach that level of echelon. And marketing and business is the same way. It's like everybody wants to know the secret. There is no secret, but there are certain things that you get, like nuances is a perfect word. Nuances that you pick up on that you can only pick up on when you've achieved a certain level of mastery that other people are completely oblivious to. But when you say to other people who are oblivious to it but are in the process, to them it's like, that's magic. Like, oh my God, how did you figure that out? Where did you discover that? And it's just time. It's just time and effort.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if any one of you that's listening has ever done personal development work, and maybe you read a book that really kind of shifted your mind and you just thought, wow, this is really unique.
Yeah.
And then you kind of went on your journey, and then ever come back to that book or movie or video or something and listen to it 2, 3, 5, 10 years after your journey, or later in your journey, and you hear it for the first time, because where you are today, the depth of that communication, you can now understand in a way that 2, 3, 5, 10 years ago, you had no understanding of.
Very interesting phenomenon.
And it's just fascinating, but that's the thing that for me keeps me going.
Sure.
I was just saying this earlier to our group, which is back to the kids thing. If we could develop the same skill or the same wonder that children have when they learn to walk, because I was just thinking, adults get to a point where we try something once, twice, 3 times is already like
pushing it.
A unique level of people.
Yeah.
5 times, you're talking in a very small percent. I'd say the top 5% of the world.
Remind me of that after.
Will do that.
Yeah.
Get to 100 times to produce a result. You're talking like 0.01% of the entire human race. So just put that in perspective. 100 times, right, to learn something or get better at something. Do you know how many times a child falls while trying to figure out how to walk?
25 times an hour.
An hour, like thousands of times on their way to walking.
Yeah.
So I'm just thinking, imagine if, let's take the 0.01%. Imagine if after 100 times they were like, I guess walking's...
I'm just rolling.
I guess walking's not for me. It's not even a conversation, right? Like, we'd have a society of people just rolling around.
That'd be amazing.
Right? So, if you could just develop that, and I don't know if it's because it's survival or they see everyone around them doing it, but there's certain things that I think us as humans, even though they're difficult, even later in life, we all kind of do because it's part of culture. Like riding a bike, there are very few people that don't ride bikes.
Sure. No, there's certain things that are innate. I was even thinking like when people get into accidents, right, and they lose their ability to walk, or they have some brain damage, they lose their ability to walk. You always see even in the movies like how much effort someone puts back into their ability to walk.
Yeah.
Because it is so critical to being human, to be upright.
Yeah.
So it's like that instinct is really deep, wherever that instinct comes from. Like I have cats, I don't have kids, but I have cats. And I'm always amazed that they've never seen other cats. And yet, instinctually, they do what big cats do. And it always blows my mind. I'm like, who taught them this crap? I wasn't walking around like, by the way, you balance with your tail. Like I didn't jump off a railing and be like, they just know. So there's got to be things in being human that are just so innate, so deeply ingrained in being human that it's just like, you're not willing to live without it. What I did want to say is, before you mentioned about like 1, 2, 3, 4 times, and I agree, like it's very rare, even people take like dance lessons or whatever, you're like, I'll take a dance lesson, maybe take 2, but they'll never hit a number. And when Nike first came out with their Fitbands, and it, like, hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people started wearing mobile devices for the first time, which is amazing because now we're capturing all this new data that's never been captured before about people's movements. But Nike was one of the first ones out the gate, and that product doesn't even exist anymore. But they gave it to runners, and that's how they made it big. And they immediately saw that if somebody would upload their data X amount of times, how many times, like for somebody who's a new runner, basically, would that increase their
more likely to
continue running? And the magic number was 5.
5 times.
That was it. So if somebody uploaded to the cloud 5 times how much they ran, from then on, like the progression of their likelihood of continued running exploded.
Wow.
That was it. Just because it was about seeing data. So what that immediately taught me is, number one, again, back to small baby steps. You don't need a lot. But number 2 is, if you've ever read Timothy Ferriss's work, like 4 Hour Body, he's big about collecting data, and that's how he really generates these books. And what you immediately learn is when you have data, you start playing an automatic game with yourself.
Yeah.
You don't even want to, but you just do, because now you're about getting better. And what we forget is that kids play games. Everything's a game to a kid. But as an adult, everything becomes super, super serious, right? So that's it. Like, they upload it, and now the game is, can I run a little bit further, or can I run a little bit faster? And if you've ever tracked yourself on a bike or swimming or running, you know that that's absolutely true. Like, I used to, I go to the gym, and I have a road bike, and it's exactly 3 miles. And I know that it takes me approximately 14 minutes to get to my gym. And every time I get on my bike, like when I hit that hill, I have this fucking hill, I'm like, okay, today we're gonna like pedal harder, because I know that's the difference between that 14-minute and like 13-minute time, and I always want to beat my time. So like, I know my numbers, but that's it. You start playing mental games with yourself, and it's important because that's how
you actually just remind me of a great app, Peak, P-E-A-K, like Peak of a Mountain. Really cool app. I think it's definitely in Apple and Android. I have an Android, and it's just brain games. I tried Lumosity, and I didn't really get into it. I don't know, for whatever reason, the games just weren't intriguing enough for me. But Peak is really cool because what they do, to talk about that, is you get this, graph charts of how you're doing and progressing, which is whatever, cool. But they compare you to a percentile of everyone else in your age group, in your certain occupation, all sorts of other ways. So you can basically chart yourself against not only other people, but yourself. And I pretty much catch myself playing to try to kick my own ass.
Yeah. I'm kicking my ass. Do you mind? It's interesting. Yeah, I mean, and I didn't think this whole conversation would go towards gamification. Honestly, I really didn't plan that at all. But now it's got my brain working on how do we take students and gamify their progress. But what I want to tell you guys, even as something stupid, we have an app called Grammarly, which fixes like your grammar and spelling, but it's really different than anything else I've ever used. And even they send me weekly data, and they show me stuff like the average mistakes other people make versus you when they write. And I'm in like the 91st percentile. So every time it comes, even though it's so dumb, I look at it for 2 seconds, but this little voice in the back of my head when I'm in the 90th percentile goes, yeah, like those idiots. They're getting it wrong. I must be really good at grammar. And it makes me feel good for like 2 seconds. And then I think to myself, would I cancel this app? Nope. That's it. But that keeps me going.
I wonder if they don't send it to me because I'm below some sort of threshold.
They're like, we find if we send this person and maybe that's true. Maybe it's true.
I've never gotten one of those.
But it's amazing. It's funny, but it really is true. When you have data in front of yourself, it just lets you measure against where you were. And think about how early we used to do that. Like, what does every kid want? Measure me, Dad. How tall am I? How tall am I? Why?
Am I growing?
Because to a kid, growing up is so important. I'm bigger. I'm smaller. Like, all that stuff is massive to a child, right? Like, being bigger. I was a baby. Now I'm not a baby. So to them, it's a measurement of, look, I'm bigger. I'm getting bigger. I must be smarter. I must be wiser. I must be more an adult.
Yeah.
It's the same stuff. So, like, this is so cool because I'm like, how do I get myself excited about all sorts of stuff? And I'm like, well, let's just start collecting more data. And it's funny because a few years ago, if you would have asked me to collect data, I'm like, ugh. Now I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And it does. It makes me excited. Even with marketing, we talk about it all the time. Like the first few years of marketing online, we would just not track We would just we would make money, but we wouldn't really track how it was happening. And it would just seem so burdensome for me to create tracking pixels and all this stuff. Now I would never think of putting a campaign together without tracking it. But my favorite thing to do all day long is just look at stupid fucking analytics. And I get really excited when it's a page that was performing at 30% is performing at 40%. That's the best part of my day. It's amazing.
So let me just loop this back around. When you learn anything new and you take anything new on, I just want you to understand that this will never go away. That feeling of frustration, that feeling of overwhelm, that feeling and voice in your head going, you are stupid, you should not do this, you will never succeed at this, blah, 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 will never, ever, ever go away. What can alter for you is the way you listen to that, which you shouldn't, just, hit the mute button or turn the volume really low so it doesn't really affect you. And then just give yourself space. If you had to learn Chinese because you were going to China and you had a month to do it, it's unrealistic to believe that you would go there and be able to speak. You might be able to say a few lines or say a few things, but you're not going to go have a conversation with a taxi driver.
I just want to say it's unrealistic, but not improbable. Because if you learn the right strategies, if you go
Tim Ferriss,
Tim Ferriss, that's all he does is he just learns great strategies. If you go to talk to Tony Robbins, all he does is master great strategies to get you to mastery faster. And that's pretty much the whole digital economy today. It's people with great information who are sharing information, getting paid for it, and sharing how to get to mastery quicker. That's it.
Yep.
So the whole human race can get smarter faster.
Either that or you're that PewDie diet pie.
Hey, leave him alone, man. He's doing good work out there. He's changing lives.
So anyway, just give yourself that space and realize that you're not going to learn Chinese in a day or a month or even two. It might take you 12 months to get to a point where you feel confident. And then from there, you are going to start building upon that foundation and that skill set. But when people start something new, especially in businesses, I cannot get it on my... What's your career? How much money are you making? I make $2,000 a month, $3,000 a month. Okay, great. What are your goals with your new business? I want to make $10,000 a month. Okay, great. By when do you want to do that? In 3 months. Okay. How much money do you have to do that? $200, $300 a month. I'm like, are you fucking out of your mind? If you can figure out how to do that, please come and teach me.
You're talking about 500% growth in what you're trained mentally, body, to do, and you want to do that in 3 months. It's just, again, it's not impossible. It's just improbable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be like a miracle for you. And the reason I say that is because if you're earning a certain amount of money in your life, you've basically set so many programs in your brain, so many rules about how much you can earn, what you're capable of. Right. It just programmed in there, right? So for you to say, just because I decided to wake up this morning and do something new and now I'm going to be this person, great, I'm all for it. I'm your biggest champion and I would love to see you get there, but work within proper expectations. If you made your focus about learning a skill set, if you made your focus about getting better at a skill set, I can get behind that 100%.
Sure.
But if you're I'm going to be a millionaire in 4 months and the most money I've ever made in a year is $50,000, I'm like, you got a fucking mountain to climb.
Yeah.
You know?
You're going to need a Sherpa or two.
Yeah. So just keep all that stuff in mind and so if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm sorry, but the camera died right in the middle of that. And then Guy had to get on a plane and leave. So I'm just going to finish that thought and then wrap up this podcast solo. So what I wanted to say is give yourself space. Just give yourself the space and time to master something. Just like a kid falling down over and over on his way to walking. Just like my son trying to figure out how to ride a bike, which, by the way, just this past weekend, he rode solo for over a mile by himself. Didn't touch him once. all of that happened because he kept putting in the work. He fell multiple times. He got up. He was frustrated. He did the whole thing that we all do, but we just don't give ourselves the space to keep getting back on that bike. So I hope what you take away from this podcast is just that, is the space that you can grant yourself. And always give yourself more time than what you think. My dad is used to be in construction. And one of the rules he had was no matter what someone tells you when they're going to do work on your house, it's going to be twice the money and twice the time, because there's just unforeseen things that you cannot think of. That's what happens when we take on new projects, right? Life happens. We can't just stop it and just focus on the one thing. So if you can give yourself that time and keep bringing yourself back to it, no matter how difficult it must seem, at some point you get over that hurdle and the fun really starts. So with that, let's wrap up this beer talk. I'm sorry that guy couldn't be with me here for the final wrap up, but I'm sure he would agree. So with that, have an amazing, amazing day, my friends, and we'll talk to you real, real soon.
Thank you for joining us on this week's Performance Enhancing Podcast. We've taken this pep talk and created a custom action guide so you know exactly what action steps to take now to grow your business. Just head over to SatoriPrime.com/podcast and download it for free. Also, please leave a comment and rate this podcast on iTunes. It'll help us get the word out. Thanks for listening. Now, go and implement. We'll see you next time.
Did you run through doors till you hit the floor? Did you read my eyes and my aching thoughts? Did you walk through walls till you had to grow?